Jacob Rees Mogg, Conservative MP, of course, and also the head of the European Research Group, which is the coordinating body of Brexiteer Conservative MPs. Now, he's written in the Daily Telegraph today, the headline is, Brexit reins have been handed to those who never wanted to leave. And you could say that David Davis has handed them even more control of the reins by stepping out.
No, I think what he's done is crucially important, because if David Davis was going along with what was agreed at Chequers, it was quite hard for Brexiteers like me to point out what seemed to be its obvious failings, because if it was supported by the people most directly involved, surely they knew more than we did, and surely there must be something in it that I had missed. It's now quite clear that that's not the case, and David Davis's resignation letter sets out that what basically happened at Chequers was that a cabinet appointed by a Remainer Prime Minister, of majority Remainer ministers, voted to remain, and that every member of the cabinet seems to have backed the position that he or she took in the referendum. So those who backed leave wanted to have a proper Brexit, and those who backed remain wanted to go back on the clear promises of the Conservative Party, and particularly the Prime Minister herself, to make sure Brexit means Brexit.
Do you think this will mean further ministerial resignations? Do you expect Boris Johnson to resign?
I just don't know. Faisal is going to be much better informed on this than I am, to be honest, that he speaks to all the right people and hears the right noises.
You've said you would vote against the White Paper if it's along these lines. Would you also be one of those who thinks it's time to have a vote of confidence in the Prime Minister?
I'm more concerned about the policy than I am about the personnel. It won't be the White Paper on which there's a vote. There'll be the meaningful vote that
Sure.
Was put into legislation. That will probably happen in October or early November. I will clearly vote against that if it's on the basis of the Chequers deal.
But the reality is, if she cannot proceed on what she feels was agreed at Chequers, she's going to be finished, isn't she?
She must just go back to what she said before. If the Prime Minister were to go back to her Lancaster House speech, there was considerable support for that. The problem with Chequers is that it's not a U-turn, it's a handbrake turn. And suddenly it's staying effectively in the single market for goods and agri-goods.
Well, she denies that. She says we still have the ability to make our own trade deals. We will still be taking back control on immigration. And, you know, you can certainly read the three-page summary in that way, can't you?
Do you remember during the election campaign, after the social care policy was dropped, the Prime Minister said nothing has changed? Sometimes people say things that do not match up with the text that you have in front of them.
But what's changed?
And I think that is this is one of those occasions.
But what's changed is that just as that policy, which was in the manifesto on social care, has been dropped.
Well, it was dropped in the middle of the campaign.
Yeah, but it was dropped.
But the Prime Minister said nothing had changed. That's the point.
No, but it was still in the manifesto.
Yeah.
There was then an election where Mrs May lost a majority. So she has advanced Brexit strategy since then. I mean, that's her right, isn't it?
Well, she's advanced backwards. She's advanced not to have Brexit.
Well,
that's what this document is saying.
It depends which you regard as moving forward or backwards. But all I'm saying is the Prime Minister, the leader of your party, has had a cabinet meeting. She's laid out her position. It's been backed by the cabinet. Yet you feel that you're honour-bound, duty-bound, your conscience, or to overturn her?
What you're saying is the Prime Minister is inconsistent with her promises, and that's a very bad position for a political party to be in. I believe we should do what we've promised the electorate we should do. And the Prime Minister, up until now, has been very clear that Brexit would mean Brexit, we'd be out of the single market, out of the customs union. Even the issue on...
But as you know, she says this is compatible with Brexit, meaning Brexit, because Brexit didn't mean the red lines, did
Well,
it?
David Davis, who's been in charge of this, says it isn't, and says it's a hopeless negotiating position. Yeah, but, you see, that's really important, because he knows the detail of this so well.
But isn't the problem, if you've got a man who has agreed to be the negotiator for 2 years, and he says it's a hopeless negotiating position, conclusion would have to be he's a hopeless negotiator, wouldn't it?
No, I don't think that's right. I think the problem is that number 10 has lost its backbone. It's decided to get a fit of the heebie-jeebies and retreat from Brexit. That was not what David Davis wanted to do. And we discover now that the negotiating strategy that David Davis wanted to follow was being hampered by Downing Street. And that is really bad policy making.
We've got an odd position here, haven't we, that you, who, would favour a hard Brexit, I suppose.
Well, I favour Brexit.
Yeah,
you see, are we going to leave the European Union or not? Chequers is not really leaving the European Union.
Of the European Union.
But we will be de facto subject to the court, and the common rule book is the acquis communautaire. It's the EU's rules.
But
we don't make any of the rules in the common rule book. That's the key thing to remember.
But we've got you and we've got Nick Clegg both rejecting what the Prime Minister's agreed. Nick Clegg, presumably because he thinks this will lead to a people's vote and Britain possibly remaining. Isn't it actually the job of the Prime Minister to leave the European Union, but to try to compromise with the nearly 50%, the 48% who voted to remain, as well as the 52% who voted to leave?
When the Labour Party won the election in 1997, did you say that it was the job of Tony Blair to compromise all his policies with the people who voted Conservative?
He most certainly said that. That's what the Third Way was all about.
The Third Way was his policy before the election, not afterwards.
But his policy was to compromise and to take others on board.
If you win a vote, that is the decision the people have made. And the government is honour bound to deliver what people have voted for.
But your interpretation is not what was on the ballot paper.
But we've made...
You can read it both ways. It's within the remit of the ballot paper. It was not on the ballot paper, the red lines.
Leaving means leaving. That's the point. We've already made a big compromise. We're going to pay £39 billion to the European Union, which we have no legal obligation to pay. That's quite a big compromise by the 52%.
Even on the terms of the Prime Minister's document, Britain is leaving the European Union. I mean, after all, that's the first line of it, isn't it?
Well, just because it's in the first line doesn't make it true. We'd be subject to this common rule book, which is the acquis communautaire for goods and agri-goods.
We would agree to be subject. There's a difference. We would agree to be subject to it.
There isn't actually, because we agree to be subject to it now. Parliament has always been in a position that it could have passed an act, a notwithstanding act, saying that they weren't going to follow a particular rule. That is a really semantic quibble, I'm afraid.
So, Mrs May you say it's not your aim, but Mrs May or may not be destroyed by this division within the Conservative
She should go back to the policy she set out before.
So what is the answer?
What is the answer is to have a Canada-style free trade deal, which is on offer, has been on offer for some time, offered without tariffs or without quotas, and to build a relationship with the European Union based on that.
And that Canada-style deal was not in the manifesto, was it?
It said we would be out of the customs union.
It wasn't in the manifesto. So you're now saying go back to manifesto, and now you're asking for something that wasn't in the manifesto.
No, the manifesto set out that we would leave the European Union. So the acid test is, does it mean we leave the European Union? And Chequers fails that test. That's the problem. We remain subject to the rules of the European Union, even if we're nominally outside.
And where do you feel the arithmetic is on this, both within the Conservative Party and if it comes to a vote of the full Parliament?
That's a very interesting question. It's fascinating that the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff is going to brief Labour members, because I think if the Prime Minister wants to get Chequers through, she will be dependent on socialist votes.
But do you think she could with Labour votes?
That's always possible. It's very, very difficult territory for somebody to run a government on the back of the opposition's support.
If there is a vacancy for the leadership of the Conservative Party, would you stand?
My sole ambition is that we get Brexit. It's not about me personally. It's all complete distraction.
That is an evasive answer.
No, it's an honest answer. What I want is to see Brexit happen.
No, but you're not. And you're not explicitly ruling it out.
I want the Prime Minister to change her policy. Yeah. That's my aim. And I want to be able to support the Prime Minister.
If there's a vacancy,
but there isn't a vacancy.
Well, there could well be, couldn't there?
There isn't a vacancy, and I'm, as I've said before, a backbench member of Parliament.
But you're not prepared to make the Sherman Declaration that you are not available to be the leader.
There is no forms of words that I could find that would convince you whatever I say, and I think that the key is to be.
Declaration, you would convince me.
The key is that we get a proper Brexit. It has nothing to do with me personally.
Jacob Rees Mogg, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you again.